Hello everyone and welcome back to my channel. So today's gonna be a very quick impromptu video because I felt like I couldn't end the year without at least introducing my houseplants. So in the last couple of videos I was trying to do a recap of just how my plants were progressing along the year, and I had decided to leave the houseplants out because most of them have just arrived this summer. But I'll go ahead and just make an introduction video to the 28 houseplants that I have. And the first one I'm gonna start off with, very ironically, because it's named after our mothers, is the mother's-in-law tongue. And this is the infamous snake plant. I believe the proper name is Sansivieria. And I own two of these babies. Now, these are probably the most, or some of the most easiest plants in my collection to take care of. One sits in my doorway entry, the other one sits in my bathroom. My bathroom gets no sunlight whatsoever. My entryway only gets sunlight in the summertime due to me having a north-facing apartment, which I mention quite frequently. So that's the plant number 1 and 2. And just to backtrack, unlike the other videos, I don't really have the specific dates that I got these plants. I can just let you know that the first couple of them are gonna be all purchased in the summer, and I'll kind of let you know when I purchase things recently and in the fall time. All right, so the next plant we have, which I also have two, is a prayer plant. The app that I have calls it a Calathea Misto, but I'm not sure. I know it's a Calathea. And again, I do have two. The other one I actually realized needed watering, so she's over there getting a good soak in a bowl. And yeah, so these are the Calatheas that I have. I do actually have a couple of different types. And what's interesting about these plants is that the leaves go up and down depending on the time of day. So during the day they are out, as you see here, and at night the leaves pick themselves up. Hence the name prayer plant, because the plant looks like it prays. You can see we have some new growth growing in here. The leaves kind of just grow in these twists out and then open up as they stretch from the stems. And it's a pretty cool plant. This one is growing in some funky directions here. Have a piece that's growing out, but then it started growing sideways, but now the leaves are growing back up. And I do like this plant. It grows in the grow space or the underlighting of my cabinets. Okay, so next up we have a super common plant, my golden pothos. This plant actually sits on sort of a ledge and is just allowed to trail over. I don't have that much growth on it since its purchase, because it actually sits in the north window. So right now during this season, it gets very, 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 very little light that just trickles in during the morning time because the sun is completely south. And again, I face completely north, but it is doing well. This vine actually was not this long at purchase, so it is actually trailing over, as I do like it to. But the reason why the pot is actually this full is because when I first bought the plant, I sort of snipped a lot of the edges and put them back in the pot so it was full, and that way it would just decide itself where it was gonna grow. And it does grow, so my ledge is this way, and it grows over the ledge where my stairs are to enter the apartment. And that is my golden pothos. We call her Betty. So the next plant we have up, or should I say tree, the name I believe is Dracaena Marginata or Dracaena, but it's a tree, and there are two that I have in this pot. It's the tree that welcomes you into my apartment, and I also have one that's next to my television that I don't want to show because it doesn't look as good as this one. But again, another plant that only receives light in my north-facing window, and as you can see, it does have some new growth in there. So I wouldn't say that it's thriving there, but it's definitely not dying there. So it's just gonna hang out there until the summertime and it gets more light, and I see how that reacts because I may be adding some lighting to that area of the house if these plants don't grow well come the summer sun. So our next plant is the Zenzi ZZ plant. So this basically is a miniature version or bonsai version, if you will, of the ZZ plant, which is infamous for going a long time without water. And we got some new growths that are in here since I moved it over here to the lights. It used to sit by the balcony door actually, but it just sat there. So I wanted to do something, so I put it under the lights. And I always recommend growing anything under good lighting, whether it's artificial or if you can provide good sunlight, because plants will grow in low light or quote unquote darker situations, but they won't thrive. Like they just won't grow like they would with sufficient light. And with that, I'll leave you on there, and we'll move on to the next plant, which is my red prayer plant. So next we have my red prayer plant, which I believe is called a Maranta. And when I first bought it, it was sprawling. It was nice, y'all. It was full, and I will put a picture up. And now I just have this. And I basically cut everything off that was dying, and it doesn't look like anything is shooting out anything new, but the current stalks or stems that are on here, if you will, weren't phased, so I just left it. And I'll probably downsize this pot when spring comes around, once I have a little bit of better control of warmer weather and more natural light coming through the apartment. But yeah, that is my Maranta, and I love her. Another plant known as a prayer plant, when she raises her leaves, they're very red maroon at the bottom, which is quite cool. The next plant that we have up is, well, the tag that came with it said Hoya Green, and it's right over there in the corner. So let's bring that into view for everyone. And she is sprawling, basically. Eventually I do want the vines to grow all over the sides of the plant shelves once I determine where I'm going to keep that. But in the meantime, I love all the growth. As you can see, I do have a stake here. Eventually I do want to direct the growth around the corners of the plant shelving and have it just grow. I may just even put it on the top shelf and let the vines just sprawl out, but I do have another Hoya that I want to do that with, so I'll show you that coming up in a bit. But yeah, this is my Hoya Green, and she has a bit of splashing and a growth that's growing super fast. Every time my partner and I look at it, the growth is just somewhere where it doesn't need to be. But yeah, that's the Hoya Green. So let's move on to our next houseplant. All right, so next up we have the Bird of Paradise. And she's nestled right over here. She used to sit on the floor, but I moved her to be a little closer to my lights. So basically I did grow this portion here in my house, this wonky leaf, and this pretty nice leaf here. Not too sure about this plant. She probably gets, there's a root growing up the bottom there, it's pretty long. She probably gets watered like every 2 weeks, every 3 weeks if I remember. It's a pretty big pot, so it stays moist for a pretty long time. But I'm hoping that this grows pretty big because I do want it to be a statement piece, and I just want it to be a little more stable so I can put it somewhere in the house to be admired. I feel like these big leaf plants, or trees if you will, need to be in a showy spot. And this plant gives total tropical vibes, so I'm really hoping to put that in a spot that's worth it. All right, so let's move along. The next plant that we have up is going to be my Dracaena Janet Craig. Let's go get her. Janet Craig, what a cute name. I think that Dracaenas have been reclassified as Sansivieria. I'm not sure, but I think I've heard that in a video or two. Anywho, they're pretty good with low light, pretty good with low water, because I often forget to water the plants that are sitting on my entrance steps, and she's one of them. But I do like the name Janet Craig, and that's actually why I bought it. I thought that Janet Craig was such a cute name for a plant. But yeah, this is my little Dracaena. I like these pots that I got from the Star Nursery out here. The clay pots out here are actually a lot cheaper than like the fancy plastic ones, so I opt for them. They come in colors like white and gray. The white one here. So let's go ahead and put Miss Janet Craig back and move on to my Allocasia. So my Allocasia Polly is one of those struggle bus plants that I always mention. When I first purchased her, she had really huge leaves. They were nice and shiny. And now she's down to this. She was actually just a stem before, and I don't know if I have a picture of that because things were hectic when the plant looked like that, which is why it eventually did look like that. But she's grown two new leaves in my care. This one is so tiny, oh my god. It just doesn't have the detail like the big one, but even the bigger ones that were on this had a lot more detail. But this is a really nice statement piece as well, but they seem to be a bit humidity hungry. When I first had it, it was away from the humidifier and the leaves like crinkled up all on the edges, but when it got closer to the humidifier, it did better. And then I think I started over watering it because of course, when you raise the humidity, it dries a lot slower. And she's actually due for a watering today, so we'll bring her over to the sink. All right, the next plant, one that my partner actually talks about a lot, the Pilea Peperomioides. Such a strange name, but a very strange plant. So it used to be not a lot nicer looking when I first got it, and this one I actually underwatered until I kind of changed the setup. So basically it was in like this really compact soil, and I kept thinking that I didn't have to really like water it because it was so thick, but little did I know that so the edges were like drying out, the center was staying moist, and basically it was just so compact. It was never fully drying out, so I was like overwatering the plant. And I think I said I was underwatering in the beginning, so there's a correction. I was overwatering the plant because the middle wasn't dry, so I actually changed the potting mix to something that was a bit more airy, and it's doing a little better. As you can see, it is continuously growing, but for some reason, the new growth isn't flat like the old growths when I originally bought it. They're just like really curved, and I don't know why. I need to look up some more about this plant. And off to the watering schedule this goes, because this pot feels a bit dry as well. Next houseplant, Ponytail Falm. So this is a pretty fun one. This actually sits on my coffee table in the living room because it kind of just attracts your eye as soon as you come up the steps into the apartment. And in summertime, when we have a bit of wind coming in through the balcony, it does give a little movement to the room. Let's see, I don't think this is due for a watering. I'll have to check that soil. I think this is some of the like compact soil that comes from the nursery that just tricks me out. So, but yeah, that's my Ponytail Falm. Also, this I believe this was a purchase during the fall too. So now we're getting into some of the later slash more recent purchases. Dries out pretty quick on the tips because again, I don't have a lot of humidity, but it grows and it maintains, so I don't want to move it into the lights just yet. And I think it is due for watering. Some of these leaves are like just droopy, kind of hard to tell. So we'll put that by the sink and I'll play around to determine if she's gonna get a watering today as well. So next we have the Philodendren Brasil, one of my favorite houseplants, of course. I always talk about in my orchid videos how much I'm a foliage guy, and this is like A1 to how beautiful some of the foliage on houseplants can get. So I call this plant Lemlin. I don't know why, maybe because it just reminds me of like lemon lime. And again, it's a Philodendren Brasil. And just to backtrack, I get mainly all my plants from like the Lowe's and Home Depot out here. There's also a local nursery called Star Nursery that many of these come from. And yeah, there's the Philodendron Brasil. She also sits on the opposite end of my golden pothos on that ledge I was talking about earlier. And she gets just a tad bit more light because the light from the stairs and the balcony hit this plant a bit more direct. Although the lighting situation all around is indirect, this one gets a lot of light, which is why this growth pattern looks like that. This is the balcony side and this is the stair side. Yeah, pretty cool. Moving on, we have another Hoya. This Hoya actually comes from one of my favorite nurseries, High Desert Orchids. And this is Hoya Matilda. What a cute, it's so tiny. When I got it, it was even smaller than this, and I started basically like staking it up vertically together. I'm not sure what I'm gonna do with the growth that's in the front, but yeah, I like this. I really like this, and I believe I'll probably, just like I mentioned with the other Hoya, I'll probably make this sprawl over the top of my plant shelves, but I'm not too sure. For now, I'm sure it's enjoying being next to the humidifier. Do we need some water? Yeah, this one's gonna need some water today. These tiny pots actually dry out very quick, but the good thing about Hoya is very similar to orchids. They can kind of withstand a bit of a drought, especially if you have it next to your humidifier. That's just a real plus there. All right, next up we have a very, very cool plant. I think this is called the Sansivieria Cylindrica, also known as like the Starfish, Sansivieria or Starfish snake plant. And it is as pointy and hard as it looks, by the way. Pretty neat plant. It sits in the corner. You water it about once a month. I always joke around with my partner. I forgot who said this. There was someone online who said something about watering snake plants every time you pay your rent, and it just stuck with me and made sense. So I always just remind my partner that, you know, just if you don't mind watering certain plants for me, it's only once a month. I think there's like a cactus and something else, and I just always joke with him that we just have to water it once we pay rent. And it actually works. It does, because this needs water like right now, and rent's due in a couple of days. So let's see what we have next. Coming up next, we have another Hoya. I think this is like called Hindu rope for its common name, but it's called Hoya compacta. Yeah, Hoya compacta. And this one actually was not growing when I first purchased it. I repotted it into a bit more of an airy soil mix. I have some, I'll show you the soil at the end of the video. But basically it started growing once I repotted it and put it under lights away. First, I think it was either up here or like right here, but it started really growing when I put it at the bottom near the humidifier. So it is going to stay there, and she does not need a watering. A lot of these double cup orchids do not, some of them are like going 2 weeks without requiring watering. And I didn't mean to say orchids, I meant to say plants in general. Next, we have another snake plant. And I don't know the name of this snake plant, so I just call it Minnie. So this one actually sits in the kitchen under those grow lights under my cabinets, and it sits away from the other plants. It actually sits on my coffee stand because it fits perfectly in there. And yeah, just another one of those plants I think is sort of a statement piece because of how unique its presentation is. So it's something that just sort of catches your eye when you walk into the kitchen. Even though there's a whole entire corner of leaves and greenery, this kind of stands on its own, and I appreciate that. All right, next plant we have here growing with the orchids is a Phildendron Heartleaf. So very similar to the Philodendren Brasil that I showed you earlier. However, this one is just plain green leaves, and as you can see, little darker shades of what appears to be like a brownish, maybe even yellowish on the on the younger growing leaves. And yeah, this is a very nice purchase, and it grows very nice. I believe that it does fare well under low light as well, but again, I tried to put as many plants as I can under the lights to enjoy them thriving and not just staying alive. So moving on to our next plant, it's gonna be the Bullwinkle Cactus. So my Bullwinkle Cactus, I normally grow this on the balcony in the summertime. And what's interesting about cactus, as you can probably already assume, is that they don't require a lot of water as they're used to growing in desert climates. But what's even more interesting is that they require even less water if you're growing them indoors. So I think this was watered maybe a month and a half ago. And when I water it, because there's no drainage, I don't put a lot of water in here, like maybe a fourth of a cup or an eighth of a cup even, just not a lot. And you know when the cactus needs to be watered because the appendages will start to become, well, to touch, they'll start to feel a bit soft, and this one is very rigid and hard, so definitely doesn't need water. And I'm quite certain that this was watered somewhere before Thanksgiving. I really haven't touched this plant in quite a while. Also grows under the cabinet lighting in the kitchen until summertime comes back around. Ooh, next we have probably my favorite snake plant aside from the Cylindrica, and that's the Moonshine. So this plant, I'm not sure if it's the one that is known to have the blue. Sorry about these dusty leaves. I was talking about how we just got an ionizer because the humidifiers spew the minerals all over from the tap water. Doesn't need water at all. Another snake plant, and as you can see this is new growth here. There's new growth all in the pot. You know, putting your plants under light is the best thing that you can do to promote optimal growth. And I really like this plant. As soon as the new growths become a bit more mature, I'll put it somewhere such as like on the coffee table or even in the kitchen just to get a bit more attention, because to me it's another statement piece that sort of deserves to stand on its own if you can give it a condition to do that. For now it's on the floor under the grow space because it doesn't require a lot of light, but again, I do want it in the light. All right, so next we have two projects that I'm pretty proud of, and they are my avocado trees that I've grown from seed. So this is tree number 2, and this is tree number 1. And I think tree number 1 is gonna need a repotting soon. So Oliver and Olivia, I don't know why those names came to me when I planted them, but yeah, this one was the first one. And I don't know what's going on with the browning of the leaves. I'm assuming that they're not taking well to the Physan that I put in the water, mainly for my orchids, so that there's no disease or bacteria spread when I share the water amongst my entire collection. And I've only noticed this browning when I started applying the Physan, so I'm not sure if that's a correlation or a coincidence regarding something else that may be a factor. But I am proud that I sprouted 2 avocado seeds. And I believe they're Haas avocados. And when I looked it up, it says that they take like a decade to even mature and possibly give you some fruit. But I don't know if I'm growing properly to like consume fruit that will come off of these plants. So once they get towards that mature level, maybe I'll look into that. But until then, I'm just gonna enjoy them adding a very, very interesting touch of green to the space. Straightening out these crusty leaves here. Yeah, and they fit in such a interesting spot. And yeah, I really love my avocado trees. I'm pretty proud of that. Next we have my, I think this is a Dieffenbachia, the Chinese evergreen, but I'm not sure because it didn't come with the tag. I don't know if I have any early pictures, but this was actually what I would consider a rescue. I bought this from the Vaughn's supermarket. And I just remember the purchase because I also purchased, I can't remember, but I purchased something else originally, and this one was sitting next to it. And when I got up to the line, she was like, "Oh, I'm not gonna charge you for this. You want this?" I was like, "Yeah, I'm gonna regrow it," and certainly it is growing in a nice mug that I got from my job for Christmas, Las Vegas. All right, so moving on to the next plant, we have the ZZ plant. So the ZZ plant is actually the plant that I originally bought when I went to Vaughn's and got that evergreen on the side as well. And I did show you earlier my compact version, the bonsai version of the ZZ plant. So just as I mentioned earlier, the plant does not require much, stores a crap ton of water in, I believe these are called like pedules. They're actually not the stem of the plant, which is, I thought was very interesting. And the leaves don't have stems, they're just like sort of extensions of the pedule, and it grows from a rhizome in the ground. These African plants are very interesting. They always have an interesting story behind such a simplistic look, but this grows in the north-facing entrance stairway to my apartment, and although I don't see any new growth, there's actually no dead growth, and it's still in the original odd, I think this is like some type of peat moss or cocoa mix in here. I'm really not sure, but it holds on to a crap ton of water, so I think this may even be watered like twice a month. And I don't water it a lot. I put a bit of water in the bottom of a bowl and I put this in the bowl. But yeah, I do love this plant. Another plant that falls into that, statement realm where it just can sit on its own. Next, we have a Bromeliad, which was actually gifted to me from my younger brother when he came to stay with me for some time. A couple of weeks ago. And as you can see, she's decorated with some Christmas ornaments. She actually sits on the kitchen counter behind my sink. Knows nothing special about the grow space, but the plant is extremely resilient and doesn't require much except for, a watering maybe every 2 weeks. I know they say you're supposed to water them directly in the crown, but I haven't done that because it has this flower. And I think she actually may be due for watering today too. I water by way of weighing my pots because I know how much they should weigh and I know how much they do. Well, not specifically, but I know how much it weighs when it's watered and when it's dry. I forgot to mention that plant, my brother and I actually named it after a Pokemon called Ivysaur because that's what came to mind when we looked at the plant. So moving along, we have I think this was reclassified as something else, but look at those leaves. This is, as far as I know, the Calathea Orbilolia, and it's a very nice plant. It grows in my kitchen space again under the cabinets. The leaves on this, again, as a foliage guy, these are the type of plants that you just don't even think about a flower. And this leaf actually grew in my care, this light one here, and it's actually growing another leaf again. The way these things grow and put on the new growth. It's so cute. It's like a little scroll coming out. But yeah, Calathea Orbilolia, also in the prayer plant, I don't know, family class. I'm not sure what the word is, but it's also a prayer plant. So leaves down during the day and they raise at night, which is just really cool. All right, and to wind down the video, we have a tiny showstopper. This is my Hoya Crimson Queen, and tiny plant, can't wait for her to grow and sprawl around whatever space I decide to keep her in. But these creamy leaves with the green, oh man, staring at it just never gets old. And again, yeah, it grows over there and under the kitchen lights. Feels like this could actually skip watering for today. And I don't know if you can see that, but the new growth kind of comes in super pink. Yeah, this is a really, really nice Hoya, and I can't wait for it to get bigger. And y'all, this is actually gonna be the final plant of the video. So stay tuned for more. I just had to squeeze this in before the new year turned around and give you all an introduction to all my houseplants. But do follow me on my social media, Facebook and Instagram, because I do post a lot of pictures, you know, with this whole ring light setup and everything, and just give you all the best that I can at any given moment. And with that being said, the name is The Right Path, and I will see you in the next video.